All right. Hello, everyone, and welcome back for another Ask Me Anything session presented by the Coalition for Cannabis Policy, Education, and Regulation Center of Excellence. I'm Shanita Penny, Co-Executive Director of CPAIR, and I lead our Center of Excellence. Today, I'll be joined by four of my dear friends, fellow advocates, small business owners, professionals, overall experts in the cannabis space today. And without further ado, I'll kick it to each of these esteemed panelists for a quick intro before we get started. Ms. Linda Greene, we'll start with you.
Thank you so very much for inviting me to participate today. Shanita, I love you with all my heart and soul. So that is my intro. I am Linda Greene, and I'm the owner and CEO of Anacostia Organics, which is a medical cannabis dispensary in Washington, D.C. I've been active in the cannabis space since 2014, I've served on several national cannabis boards, but I'm very happy to be a licensee in the District of Columbia and surrounded by all my good friends here.
Thanks, Linda. Courtney.
Well, thank you so much for having me, Shanita, and I'm also equally glad to be here amongst friends. My name is Courtney Davis, and I serve as the Deputy Director for the Maryland Office of Social Equity. Our office was created during the Cannabis Reform Act of 2023, and so been here for a little over a year. Prior to that, I worked for Marijuana Matters, which was a organization that was focused on increasing social equity within the licensed cannabis space and really working to repair some of the harmful laws from the war on drugs.
Thanks, Courtney. Colin.
Thanks, Dr. Penny, for giving us this platform to be able to move forward with. So my name is Colin Fraser, owner CEO of Upling. So we're the first Black-owned cannabis delivery app in the United States and in Jamaica. So essentially, we operate like Uber Eats for cannabis, and we do a lot of advocacy around recidivism and helping out returning citizens.
Thanks for joining us. And last but certainly not least, my brother Tahir.
Hello, everyone. My name is Tahir Johnson. I'm the founder and CEO of Simply Pure Trenton. We're one of the first Black-owned legal dispensaries in my hometown of Trenton, New Jersey. I've also previously worked in cannabis advocacy for the past number of years. The immediate past president of the Minority Cannabis Business Association, following in OG Shanita Penny's footsteps. Also previously worked with United States Cannabis Council, Marijuana Policy Project, and the National Cannabis Industry Association as a director of social equity, trying to advance social equity policy and opportunities for minorities in the industry. And I'm happy to be here with family and friends talking to you all today as well.
Thank you all for joining me. You know, I was inspired to bring this together as I was thinking about Small Business Saturday. And I certainly know that I can't take small business owners out of their businesses on that busy day, that busy weekend. But I know every day is a challenge. And I know as much as we are excited to be in this space, we've had to fight a lot. We've had to fight for, you know, a way in. We've had to fight every day to stay afloat. And we're going to fight to at some point thrive in this space. So I want to kick things off by setting the scene. We've got 40 states that have legalized medical cannabis. 24 of those states have also gone a step further and legalized cannabis for adult use. And so I just want to start, if people didn't catch it in your intros, where's everybody from and what's the current legal status of cannabis where you live, where you operate your businesses? Linda, I'll start with you.
So I'm from Washington, D.C., originally from Virginia by way of North Carolina, as most of us in Washington, D.C. are. The state of cannabis in Washington, let me give you a little history. D.C. was the first to legalized cannabis on the East Coast in 1999 under the chairmanship of Arrington Dixon. And it made it through the council, but it didn't go anywhere else. And then it was picked up again in 2010. Because DC is not a state, we have not been able to exercise our rights as taxpaying citizens to have recreational cannabis as we, as the city's citizens voted for and passed by the council and the mayor. Because our budget has to be approved by Congress each year. And every year since we have submitted the budget since 2014, when it was legalized in DC, there's been one member of Congress, Congressman Andy Harris from Maryland, who has placed a rider on our budget that forbids us to use any DC taxpayer dollars to have a regulated adult use market. So we are still in that medical side. But we've gotten the laws changed to really loosen it up so that we can provide cannabis to anyone 21 and over from anywhere in the world. But it's been a long struggle. But in the meantime, that also created another industry, the I-71, Initiative 71 industry, where the law says you can home grow, home share, and home use with no monetary value. So that's when these little pop-ups started coming up with selling t-shirts. I'm not going to, and I'll give you some cannabis for the price of that t-shirt, or, you know, whatever. So that has really flourished more in the DC market than the legal cannabis industry. But fortunately, the city is taking measures to bring everybody under a regulated system.
Fantastic. Thank you for that background. I'm gonna kick it over to Courtney to tell us a little bit about where she's sitting and what's happening there.
Sure. As a DC resident, I'm really happy to hear what's happening in DC, Linda, and that the council and the mayor have been able to try and really bring those two groups together and really, you know, connect the legacy community with the licensed community. And so I'm really happy to hear about some of those updates. In the state of Maryland, we have had a medical program since 2017, and then adult use as of July 2023. And so there was a ballot initiative in 2022 that took place in Maryland, and majority of residents said that they wanted the option to have adult use. And so when the legislators came together during this session, they created a framework that created our office, as well as how they were going to allow new licensees to participate in this industry. They created some, you know, they created some reinvestment programs and got really creative with the tax dollars. And so that's essentially where we are here in Maryland.
Excellent. We're going to come back and talk about ballot initiatives in just a little bit. Tahir, what's going on in your neck of the woods?
Yes. Hello, y'all. So I actually just opened up my dispensary. I'm located in Trenton, New Jersey. We're the capital. We opened up on July 27th. So we just celebrated our 4-month anniversary. New Jersey's market was legalized for adult use in 2022. And I was one of the first, I was actually one of the first licensees. Here is definitely, so most of the time I spent over 2 years going through like the licensing process, and really mostly the build out and navigating a lot of the municipal hurdles. My brand, Simply Pure Trenton, we're also a licensee of Simply Pure, which is the first Black-owned legal dispensary in the country, based in Denver, Colorado. So shout out to Wanda James, worked very closely with her. And like I said, it's exciting for me. We're a new store, so it's definitely challenging, but I'm learning and growing every day, and trying to just take advantage of a new market and kind of capture, because since even though New Jersey's pretty new, now we already have over 200 dispensaries that are open in just that short amount of time. So you definitely have to stay competitive.
And Colin, I'd love to hear about what's happening in DC. Linda set us up with some great background and context, but tell us how you've gotten into the market and what you do, not only in DC, but abroad.
Thanks. And so what we've seen in DC is a lot of the legacy market coming in. One thing, like me and Linda's been working with APCA to try to figure out how's a way we could kind of level the playing field and making sure that the legal dispensaries kind of come forward with that. So that's been an interesting battle there. And I think the consensus is that they're leaning toward on the legal side as more people start to recognize the medicinal use of it and the importance of safe cannabis. So I think that's one of the biggest things that DC is trying to promote to make sure that like legally across the board, there are only 10 dispensaries, right? But you have all these pop-ups across that leads to the miseducation on, the type of products that are coming into the store, which is definitely what's needed on serving safe use cannabis, especially in the medical field. Now abroad now, and the thing about Upling is so unique because we serve in New York, New Jersey, New Mexico, now serving in Texas and in Jamaica is that we see so many different regulations across the board and how each one is using, what New Jersey is doing to implement. Now, I'll tell you, like in Jamaica legally, you're able to have up to 2 ounces with you at any given time. So if you're in Jamaica and you get pulled over, don't let police come and take away your weed because, to make sure to say, oh, you're not allowed up to 2 ounces. And then so, you look at Jamaica as being the epicenter of having cannabis, but they're like a baby when it comes to monetizing it. So they have a long way to go as far as the market that we look at today. When we were at MJ Biz, happened to run into a representative from the VI. So the VI legalized cannabis. So you have St. Croix, St. John, and St. Thomas, where in St. Croix, up to 15 cultivators and 7 dispensaries. St. John, 5 cultivators, 3 dispensaries. In St. Thomas, you have 15 cultivators and 7 dispensaries that are going to be allowed to have recreation cannabis. So they looked at what America was doing, and they know the Virgin Islands is big on tourism. So they're trying to set themselves apart from, hey, everybody has a beach, everybody has rum. What's going to set us apart? Ganja, right? So they're looking at the models that are going on here and incorporating that into the playing field there in the VI. So look out for that coming really, really soon.
That's very interesting. I mean, you brought up the patchwork of state laws. You compared that to the patchwork of then the laws of the various islands in the Caribbean that are legalizing. And you make a great point. There's a lesson to be learned around, having some minimum standard that everybody can understand. Linda, I can imagine that you deal with people who are coming in from Maryland, Virginia, DC, and we all have different laws. To hear the same thing is probably true in New Jersey, New York, where you have people that assume that just because this is legal in their backyard, that it would be the same. And that's a huge issue. What are your thoughts on the public education, the public safety campaigns that are urging consumers to shop in the regulated stores, whether it's in New York or in DC? Linda, do you have some thoughts on that?
And yes, actually, there needs to be a lot more education. And what I have found out is, years ago when there were programs on TV about, about marijuana, weed, or whatever, people had that stigma of cannabis, which they should not have. It was never promoted back in the 60s and 70s as a healing plant and all of its healing properties. And so it was always about being high, getting high, but nothing about, how good this plant is for us. And we have to remember that it's been on the face of Earth since there's been an Earth. And I always tell everybody, what do you think the root doctors were using? What do you think was in those peace pipes? It was this plant, this magnificent plant. So I do a lot of education in my community. I'm constantly teaming up with others who have outlets to educate, and particularly older people, because it's so beneficial for everything that you experience when you get older. I'm 72, be 73 next month. It would be, I use cannabis every day. I don't smoke it anymore because I was a cigarette smoker for years. And that inhaling sensation stays with me, but I use it in multiple forms every day. So I appreciate you doing this, because the education component of the benefits of medical cannabis, not only for adults, but we also have pediatric doctors who specialize in medical cannabis for their pediatric patients.
That's great. Tahir, what do you find as a newer dispensary owner? How much time are you spending educating either your consumers or even other stakeholders in the community, legislators, regulators?
For sure. So for me, I think education is something that's important at multiple different levels. For me, it started with educating my team to make sure that they could be knowledgeable about applications of cannabis. Although we're an adult use dispensary, we still want them to have a very good understanding of medical cannabis. And I want them to have a very good understanding of the different products that we carry and, what they're good for. So we spend a lot of time with our vendors and partners doing that. With the educational front, like you said, I've also spent a lot of time like working with I've had a number of members from the commission, other different types of legislators actually come by the store just to see what it's like. I think for people to see the difference between what a legal dispensary looks like versus what you get when you go to the experience they might have had copping off their guy or whatever for years, or going to a trap spot. Again, it's a whole different experience. And also the amount of different products that we have, knowing that everything is tested and regulated, I think is very important. But it's also, I think one thing I can speak to is how, as you said, different things are different in different states, and it creates opportunities. So like, for example, where I am here in New Jersey, we're right on the border of Pennsylvania. So I'm 6 minutes from the Pennsylvania line. And it's interesting, the rules here in New Jersey don't allow us to advertise or even promote cannabis, but right next door in Pennsylvania they do. So every New Jersey dispensary has a billboard in Pennsylvania. And because cannabis is also not legal for adult use there in Pennsylvania. So different states have different levels. So it's every state just really has a patchwork of different laws. So while there's medical cannabis there, they don't have adult use. And so it's important, again, just to be able to meet all types of customers.
Totally. I want to switch gears a little bit. We started talking about ballot initiatives a little earlier. This year, cannabis was on the ballot in 4 states. 3 of those state ballot initiatives failed, including Florida. And I think the whole country and a lot of the world was watching to see what would happen in Florida. What do you guys think about, this overwhelming loss? I mean, a lot of these ballot initiatives had 53 and 56% of the vote, but couldn't quite hit that 60% threshold for success. Does this signal a slowdown in momentum? What does this mean for you guys? How'd you interpret those losses?
If I could jump in,
Well,
I think, oh, sorry.
no,
I
yeah,
think
go
it
on.
just matters with the education. One thing that I got from Tahir is you said you're bringing the electives coming into the shop. So it's normalizing the experience. And I just think that people at the top don't really understand the experience, and that leads to the miseducation of it, number one, right? The lack of knowledge behind it. So then they're bringing their own interpretation of why they won't let this in, because they're not viewing it as something like a pharmacy, right? Going into CVS and picking something off the shelf to be able to help with your PTSD, to help with your sciaticus, to help with depression. It's just the normalcy of it and bringing that into play.
Yeah, and I was just going to say, in education, that is one of the things I think New Jersey has done a pretty good job at. I was able to early on partner with the governor's office in doing a campaign around cannabis. They also have a number of different programs and opportunities for educating from people that want to be in the industry to people that want to learn about cannabis. Like right now, I'm actually an instructor for the New Jersey Business Action Center, and we have a program with all different types of experienced cannabis business owners and professionals in all different types of different parts of the industry that are taking the time to educate people. So just that opportunity, the more that we can educate our consumers, everybody from top to bottom, and even point to these other states to be able to, let them know that the sky doesn't fall, right? I think one of the, personally in my municipality, one of the big things that I'm looking at trying to educate my council on is consumption lounges and helping them to feel comfortable with it. I know a number of states have now legalized it. And I know I spoke to a city council person, and he was like, "Oh, you don't want to have a place where people are going to be smoking weed and then driving away high or leaving." And I'm like, "Well, why don't you say that about all the, however many bars you have in town, right?" But cannabis is, again, I think it is something where as people can be educated, see how this works in other places. All these things help to just validate and help to normalize the industry. But going back to what you were talking about, with seeing Florida, it really was interesting for me to watch because, during my time at Marijuana Policy Project, I was seeing just a streak, right? We were on a hot run. Every state was, having these overwhelming numbers. New Jersey was one of them. New Jersey, Maryland, states like that, people were calling for cannabis. So it really is unique to see the direction we're going now. But I don't think it's necessarily a slowing of momentum, but I think as we're getting here, we're getting to the much more difficult states, right? I think the ones that where people were a lot more open to cannabis, they've been done, especially seeing states that have gone from medical to then recreational, right? The states that have been medical first have had some time to normalize and people get to understand what it's like and then go recreational. So I would say Florida is one that was really surprising. But it seems like you had opposition from the governor and so many different things. So that was a difficult battle there. But that one was the one that probably surprised me the most.
May I just plug in something? Being in the center of Washington, D.C., the capital of the United States, I've been doing a lot of political education also, and I'm constantly having members of Congress and their teams in the dispensary and educating them. I've even had the IRS in. I mean, think about the taxes they're charging us. So they had never been to a dispensary and knows how it operates. And so I've had them in and taken them from beginning to end. And, in other agencies like that, because we have people regulating on our behalf who don't know anything about cannabis, but they don't know anything about our business, which is different from other businesses because we're still federally legal, So I do a lot of that here at Anacostia Organics. It's so important that we educate those who are making these decisions for us.
Absolutely. Florida definitely caught me off guard too. I thought after, 2 attempts that adult use would pass, we'd see that evolution in the market. But what I do feel is that what we're hearing voters say is that we're not just saying yes to any old thing. We saw the medical market stand up, and it hasn't been as equitable as people would have liked. We've been working towards creating a more equitable industry for years, and I think that when you have an opportunity to shut things down and get it right, I think it's a good thing. I do want to talk about some of the regulatory issues that exist today, both at the state level and then the lack of a federal framework. Linda, you mentioned the IRS. I think it's so smart that you have agencies actually in these businesses so that they can better understand what it is that we are dealing with. Cannabis businesses, unlike other small businesses, don't have access to the SBA. And so, Courtney, I would love to hear a little bit more about the Office of Social Equity and the resources that you provide to social equity businesses in Maryland. And I like to refer to social equity businesses as small businesses because that's what they are.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, for sure. They all are small businesses. And Maryland was the first state to open cannabis licensing around for social equity applicants in all license types. So that's micro and standard grower, processor, dispensary categories. And so through the Cannabis Reform Act, there were a lot of equity provisions that were baked into this bill. That was one of them. And so what we did, one of the first things that we did when we started was we started to work on this application process. And so we came up with what the disproportionately impacted areas were going to be for the individuals to qualify. We hosted application writing clinics to make sure that these individuals who may have not seen an application like this before, to make sure that they understood how to answer these questions. I mean, we have the worksheet available, but when you're talking about spending $5,000 on something, you want to make sure that you're really certain that your investment is going to, that you have a good chance of making that investment turn into an opportunity. And so we hosted those application writing clinics, and we also had information sessions, and we ended up with 1,700 applications that were applying for 205 business licenses. And so we really helped to create a diverse pool of applicants, and we're happy to say that most of the awardees are self-identified as African American business owners. And so I like to think of it as like all the tools in our toolbox. And so we also have a technical assistance grant that these conditional licensees were able to receive $14,000 each, to where they were able to use that for professional services to get their business up and running. We hosted a 2-day intensive in Baltimore, and we called it like what to expect. You just got your license, you won the lottery, now what do you need to do? And so we had some of our university partners and experts that came in and really talked to them about what you should be thinking about when you form your business. We hear from so many people about the critical steps, mistakes that they take in the beginning, accepting certain types of equity deals, forming their businesses in a way that doesn't allow for them to make as much profit as they would like. And so we wanted to make sure that we were front loading a lot of folks with this information. And then as they became, they have 18 months to 2 years to open their business, they'll have access to a social equity partnership program, which is a mentoring program where existing operators will be able to offer services and resources at a discounted rate to these conditional licensees. And the center for that is that the existing operators are going to receive a grant from our office. We also have the Cannabis Business Assistance Fund, which we're going to give grants out to licensees. We haven't identified exactly how that will work, but we've had an opportunity to learn from a lot of states, and we realize that there's a time when people need money, there's a time they need information, there's a time when they need grace, they need extensions. We're providing resources to counties and local officials as they understand what the new zoning and permitting laws are. And so although we are directly helping the small businesses, we also have an opportunity to help with the stakeholder engagement and support education with all the government and county elected officials that they're going to be interfacing with.
I love to hear that. I just think that there's so much progress being made in states like Maryland. New Jersey had a great example to follow, in that they have also licensed a number of, or at least had applications from a number of social equity applicants for all license types. And I'm glad that you made the point that these licenses are available, because, years ago, there was a conversation where they were going to relegate social equity licensees to only, being involved in one aspect of the supply chain, one aspect of the business, right? And they justified that by saying, oh, this has the lowest barrier to entry. Mm-hmm. But I don't think that we should be putting social equity applicants into a box. They should have the access to any of these licenses, and they should be able to grow these businesses to any size that they desire. Tahir, talk to us a little bit about what you experienced as a social equity applicant, now full annually permitted operator in the state. And tell us how you like us to refer to you. Are you a small
Hey.
business or a social equity business?
Oh man, it's I mean like I think you said it perfectly in the beginning, right? I mean, social equity business really is small, it really is a small business, right? And I've definitely learned so much in my time doing this. I don't earn a master's degree in business out here in these couple of months. No, but in all seriousness, it is in New Jersey, they social equity, they social equity allows you to be priority in licensing. So they did priority in a number of different ways. The first tier was social equity, and that was if you had a previous cannabis charge, or also people that were from the lowest income level areas. The second one was diversely owned businesses. So if you were minority owned, woman owned, or disabled veteran owned, that was the second level of priority. And then the third level was the impact zones. And that was if your business was being open in an area that was previously had the highest disparate rates of cannabis arrests. So fortunately for me, I was able to check all three of those boxes. And thanks to that, I was awarded one of the first 11 licenses that New Jersey gave out. And one of the things that has been different with social equity here is that it's removed a lot of barriers of entry that you previously had in licensing. This was my third time trying to apply for licenses. Both of the times before were medical limited licenses, so there weren't really many opportunities. Right, the first time I applied in Maryland, there were 4 cultivation licenses and 10 processing licenses, and a bunch of people applied. The license I applied for the first time in New Jersey, there were 5 of them. So, again, now that there's more opportunity and that we have the priority, you don't have these things like you had to have a certain amount of income and certain amount of income at the property. It's made it a lot easier to get into business. Now, when you are actually in business, like I said, cannabis, I think everybody has this idea that because I think we've tossed around this term generational wealth for a long time. So everybody thinks that you get in cannabis and you're going to strike it rich. But what I've learned, it really is it's something that you have to love doing, and you have to love your business. I've had the opportunity to learn from people like Linda, like I call her my auntie. Like I've seen her, I've seen how much passion, how much time she spends in that store. So I knew what it was going to take for me to do the same thing. But I'm very hands on. And one of the things I've learned from a lot of the people that I'm really adjusting and just trying to figure out how to do is you have to be nimble, right? The smaller the business, the better, to do as much as you can with as little as you can. And even as you get more, just try to grow slow and steady. And just try to get to being profitable is so important. So again, I love being here and just trying to learn new things. It's great to be able to give back to our community, because even though we're a small business, we really want to set the example of what a good cannabis business can be. So I'm always trying to, we gave out 50 turkeys for Thanksgiving, like things like that felt good. We're doing expungement clinics here in the community. So again, that small business also means that you have that local connection and you want to use that to your advantage. And we try to go. We're small in size, but big in heart.
Absolutely. Colin, you mentioned your company's focus on things like recidivism. Could you tell us a little bit more about how you're impacting and working to overcome, the aftermath of prohibition and over policing and the war on drugs?
Yeah, and I appreciate this topic because this is my bread and butter. Just I never thought in a million years I would have been incarcerated for cannabis to turn around and have a business in cannabis, right? Not only that, but then to employ people who had the same likely charges as well too. That's why it's so important. Just when you look at the grand scheme of things, of people who acquired licenses in the beginning didn't look like us, right? But then they were making millions of dollars over that. And it's like, what about the opportunity for us? Then you have social equity that comes along and helps that. Um, and just speaking about that, it just gives a whole new light of debunking, right? This medical plan and just the positive of it, right? Where then now I get to employ people who had cannabis charges or other non-violent charges that deal with cannabis, and actually get to employ them that are in it. So then not only do they get to learn about an industry that they were, demonized by, but now to understand the mechanisms and how it works, right? From A all the way to Z. So there's nothing um light about that, or being able to help those who coming out of incarcerations and back into this. We teach a class at the Maryland Pretrial Services where inmates who spend their last year of incarcerations come to this place where they could go in and out on ankle bracelets. And we teach an entrepreneurship class there every single Monday as a cohort, right? To get them in the business mind. And after, when they leave from there, then they have the choice, you give them the choice to come back into the cannabis market. But then all those who are actually working in the industry now, I want to just give them an opportunity to let them know what it's about, right? And to educate them on how to maneuver with it. Because like in DC, the social equity, one of the criteria was out being incarcerated, right? And being out. So one of the things that we look at is like, okay, we now give you a license after, I know a couple who spent over 4 decades in incarceration total, right? So you're coming out now. Where are you going to get $2 million to set up a dispensary or set up a grow, right? So that's one thing like DC needs help on working on, where can we allocate funds to help out businesses like that? Maryland's done a good job. They set aside like $40 million to be able to help with the grants and such like that. And then you had classes on understanding where to go. Once again, back to education, right? When you're coming out of incarceration or you spend so much time behind bars, everything has changed, right? Not only to the times, but I've had this conversation time and time again where I have people coming out of incarceration, maybe 2, 3 decades spent behind bars. You talk about responsibilities. You got to understand these people didn't have to wash their clothes. They didn't have to pay a light bill. They didn't have to worry about where their food was coming from. Because everything was provided for, when incarceration. But then coming out now, it could be scary now, because here are things now I have to be responsible for back in the community, let alone back in this industry where there's so much regulations or rules, having to understand those responsibilities. They need help going through that.
Absolutely. You guys are leading and own small businesses, but the impact is huge. The work that you're doing is so necessary, and you guys aren't shying away from it. Courtney, I want to talk a little bit about something your governor, and I know you live in DC, but our governor, Wes Moore, did in terms of leading this country with his pardon action. Can you talk a little bit about that and how it has affected people in a positive way as it relates to education and workforce and all of those things?
Yes, very, very exciting day when we learned that the governor was pardoning 175,000 Maryland convictions for cannabis possession, including misdemeanor possession and certain convictions related to drug paraphernalia, which is really important because paraphernalia is normally not included when we talk about expungements or any types of pardon. It's normally just for simple possession. And so we were really excited that we were able to get that the governor took that step and included paraphernalia. These convictions have really long-lasting collateral consequences, impacting folks and their families. A lot of times we talk about the individual, but what about all the family members that had to pick up the slack when that person was no longer able to generate income, take care of their family, or take care of their parents? So many of us live that life cycle. And so having an opportunity to have a fresh start and a clean slate is really, really important. And we all know that cannabis enforcement has disproportionately impacted communities of color. And Governor Moore is committed to reforming these outdated laws. And, he talks a lot about closing the racial wealth gap. And we believe that this is one of the first steps to doing so, because you are giving folks an opportunity to generate more income, to have access to education. And again, a list of those collateral consequences kind of are getting deleted when you are able to just go out as an individual and have access to some of those resources that folks with a record don't normally have.
Again, such important work. And it goes beyond just our small businesses, right? This is impacting the workforce. This is impacting the talent pipeline across the country. And so it is so important for us to remember that as we build this industry, we also have to go reconcile the damage done by prohibition. I want to take a minute to kind of switch gears and talk about some of the challenges that you all are facing as you work to support small and social equity businesses, as you work in your small businesses, and what regulatory changes we need to see. I know a lot of you are involved in the evolution of state regulations because that's how you stay in business. But I want to get some ideas and some thoughts around what's happening at the federal level. What's a piece of legislation that we've seen worked on that you're looking forward to being reintroduced in the new session next year?
Mhm.
Well, I'd like to see total legalization of cannabis.
All right.
You
I
know,
like
I'd
it.
like that to be done by executive order as soon as he takes office. And then, you know, I think that, you know, many of us would just like to go that route, but I'd really like for the safer banking legislation to go through. I'll be open 6 years next month. And access to banking and loans and financing is just not acceptable. Even if not just for the business, but for me as the licensee and the owner of the business, you know, credit is just shut down. Even trying to refinance the home I've had for 25 years, but because my payroll, my salary comes from a cannabis company, you know, that's a very difficult situation. So I would like to see us to be able to have the privileges of any business, because I feel that if you are licensed by your state, by your city, you are a legal business and you should have the same thing as the liquor stores, the tobacco shops, the tobacco companies, the grocery store, you know, anything. But I do think that there's going to be movement by this administration. And I think it's going to be aggressive movement by the administration. And so I'm hoping that, you know, some of these things are tackled, but ultimately the big one is the legalization and the banking. If we move from a Schedule 1 to a Schedule 3, that would help all of us, small, big entities, because of the 280E tax law. And unlike other states, and DC taxes me 280E also. So I'm not just dealing, you know, with a state, I mean, a federal tax. I'm dealing double whammy. But I just want to take a second to say, even though I lost 50% of my business July 1st, 2023, when Maryland went recreational, they have rolled out this program right. And they have set it up to not for failure, but for success. So I really have to compliment my neighbors in Maryland, Courtney, and the governor and everybody for doing a great job and bring some of that teaching and everything over here, because DC is not taking it to the level that you all are. And I talked to those that are transitioning who have applied for a license. I have like a rotating door at Anacostia Organics because I don't want them to be set up for failure. Because I didn't have the privilege of having that insight and that knowledge when I got my license. But, you know, we're going to continue to work to make sure that this is a thriving industry for everyone.
Thank you. Anybody else? I mean, Linda summed it up. I think she said what we all want. But does
Yeah,
anybody
she
else
did.
Linda
want
is
to?
also the queen of DC, so
That's
no
right.
Yeah,
notes.
she hit it so good. There's not really anything else to say. Ditto everything she said. We want all of that.
The Queen of DC would like some of that Maryland business back.
You bring up an interesting point. I know, Tahir, you're also bordering a state that doesn't have an adult use program, and so you are the beneficiary of Pennsylvania not having adult use right now. But if there were a piece of legislation, I know you've been around for the MORE Act, you've been around for SAFE, any other pieces of legislation at the federal level that you think would be an immediate benefit or just impactful for current business owners?
Absolutely. Well, I can't say enough. I would definitely echo what Linda said about safe banking. I think that is a really critical one. The amount that we pay for fees for our banks, it's crazy. Like it's a lot more. I pay a $500 a month fee for my account. I pay like a 0.5% on the money, the cash I deposit, and it's mostly cash that I'm depositing. So like the fees are high. I will say I do have a great relationship with my bank. I do like the relationship, but as somebody that came from banking, the services that you get aren't the same as what a bank would typically offer a business. Also, one of the big things that it impacts you so much personally. I just had my account. It hurt so bad for my personal bank account that I had at PNC, where I was a branch manager for a long time part of my career. Now that I have a cannabis business, they shut down my account. Even I wasn't safe. They shut down my account, my credit cards, all that stuff. I've had, so the things that you have to deal with. Again, having credit cards shut down, right? It's crazy. So I think as a business, like that is something that's really important, but also mostly, as Linda said, to be able to have access to credit. As a result of not being able to have access to traditional banking systems, and those of us that do have debt or are thankful to be able to get capital, it's at a very high interest rate, right? Like I'm looking at high interest debt also. So again, being able to have access to legal banking systems is probably one of the biggest things that will immediately help business owners. I also think that I know descheduling, which is on the table right now, could have a great impact because it will help to get rid of 280E. And so not having to pay high tax rates as a business, that's something that would really be helpful. But of course, I think full legalization is super important. It's something. Again, I think that cannabis should just be legal, correct? Like I think it's something that we all know right now. And I love what Linda said, that she's looking for something bold prediction to happen, and I honestly wouldn't be surprised. I was definitely disappointed. As somebody who spent a lot of time talking to lawmakers, that we didn't see more action, especially around safe banking, because I think we had a lot of opportunity to try to get it done, but we didn't. So let's hope that there's some better luck with the new administrations that are coming.
Can I just quickly also mention the States Act, because I think that it's a bipartisan bill that would allow each state to kind of determine for itself the best approach to cannabis within its state borders. And it would also extend those protections to Washington, D.C. and
I was just getting ready to say, what about us? Since we're not a state. It's going to protect everybody but us.
No, it includes the territories and the federally recognized tribal nations. And so I think when we think about the politics, and one of the things that I learned when I first moved to DC is someone said the pendulum always swing back and forth. And so I think that where we are now, bills have always had to be bipartisan for the better part of the decade. But I think that the States Act is something that, has good bipartisan support that people might be interested in taking another look at.
Well, you took my next line, Courtney. Thank you so much for saying that. I have been in support of the reintroduced States Act from Representative Joyce. And to your point, it doesn't expand markets. It is there to support the decisions that each state has made. It is there to give relief to the businesses that exist today and to essentially create a federal regulatory framework that will ensure that these products are safe, that will ensure that from state to state, this medicine that so many people have, become dependent upon and have, really seen major changes, especially when they've moved from other alternative pharmaceuticals or, not using anything. I just think that it's the solution that works for everyone today. And I am not opposed to seeing incremental reforms, because I think that's where we get a lot of the, that's where we have the opportunity to work out a lot of the very important details. But a more comprehensive solution like states would address things like 280E. It would address so many of the challenges that folks are experiencing and dealing with from state market to state market. We've got about 8 minutes to go, and I want to make sure that everybody has an opportunity to just, share a gem, a thought that they want to leave folks with, either from a small business perspective, cannabis reform as a whole. I'll go around the room and I'll start with you, Colin. Take a minute or two and just leave our audience with something insightful.
The biggest thing for me, what we do, give back, give back, give back. It's about community. In cannabis, we built a really strong community, as we see here on this call. We're helping one another. We reach one as we teach one. My wife often says this saying where if the town can't sell you, the city's not going to buy you. So if you don't have good representation of where you come from, when you get out there bigger, they're not going to want you because of where you're based in. And I think that's one of the biggest things we got to look back. For me, my biggest community is my returning citizens, making sure I go back and uplift them and give back to them. So that's what I leave. Make sure you give back.
Thank you. Courtney, what you got?
I like that. And I'll build on to what Colin mentioned and talk about the community reinvestment portion of this and how that's linked to cannabis reform and supporting businesses. One of the other tools that our office is overseeing is the Community Reinvestment Repair Fund. We had 8 town halls this past fall, and we invited community stakeholders and county leadership, but we also invited the licensees to attend, because the success of these businesses is directly linked to funds being reinvested in those communities. A lot of social equity programs are set up that way, and to where those funds are linked to the revenue of the sale of cannabis. And so it goes back to creating, this full circle that we're supporting the businesses, supporting reinvestment, supporting the restorative justice pieces, and the education, and the reducing the stigma. That is all going to be linked to creating a equitable and healthy industry that is reflective of this nation.
Tahir.
All right. So I'll just say, first, thank you for giving me the opportunity to speak on this webinar today. It's an exciting industry. I think as a cannabis business owner, it is important to always remember to give back to your community. And, again, I think that we have, I think it's also important to use your voice to really understand what's going on and know how you can impact policy, not only at your municipal level, your state level, your federal level, because I think we just really have to be active, and it's an exciting time for cannabis, right? Hopefully we'll just go up from here and see some change in the future.
I love it. And last but certainly not least, Ms. Greene.
It's been so exciting, Shanita. Thank you so very much for doing this, and count me in anytime you need me for it, because I like to talk and I like to talk cannabis, and I like to talk cannabis business. I would say, I made a commitment in my application back in 2014, 2015, whenever I put in the application, to make sure that I hired from my community in Ward 7 and Ward 8, east of the river, being the first dispensary that's going to open, that would open here. But I wanted to make sure that we're building different generations and teaching them this industry that is going to be around for a long time. So I hire, if you don't live east of the river, don't even apply. That's my motto. And I hire from my community to keep it going. And I try to hire minorities for almost every aspect of the business. Not, a lot of us are not in these ancillary businesses. So we are limited. Thank God, Colin has a delivery app. I'm using him. We've contracted with him. I use a minority woman-owned security company, global. I mean, everything I'm trying to do is to create this whole wealth within our own community. When I got in it, none of us were doing those services. But now my IT company, everything, I'm bringing in, our minority operators in those ancillary businesses. So that's really important. But thank you again.
Thank you. Thank you all. I am just going to take the next few minutes to encourage everybody watching to shop locally, to shop regulated. If you're in DC, if you're in New Jersey, you just heard from folks that have not only built businesses, but they are doing the work to repair our communities, to ensure that our folks from our communities are employed, and not just employed, that they have, are earning living wages, that they have, safe work environments where they can actually be promoted and grow in this industry. So, if you are looking for delivery services and you're a retailer out there, check out Colin and Upling. If you are in a state trying to figure out how to support small businesses and social equity businesses, look no further than the state of Maryland. You can probably also take a look at some of the things that are happening in places like Illinois as well. I don't want to leave them out. There were so many places and so many people that we could have included, more of our friends that have been doing this work. But I want to just take a moment now to say thank you to each of you. Thank you not only for what you've done today, but the work you've done over the years, what you will do in the future. I want to encourage people again, shop regulated, know what you are consuming, know where your dollars are going. Right now, they are helping us to pay these exorbitant taxes. Show up with us when we are lobbying in DC to affect cannabis laws. Thank you so much. If you want to learn more about small businesses or CPAIR, please check out cpair.org. Follow us on X and now LinkedIn. Again, thank you so much for your time, and we look forward to bringing you another Ask Me Anything session in the new year. Take care, everybody.